Hey everyone, welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. I hope you guys are having a great day. In this video, one of my subscribers asked me if I could kind of walk him through how I would typically debug stuff when I'm doing like web development. More specifically, he's working with React, so I'm probably going to make this a React debugging tutorial. And honestly, the best way to get better at debugging is to run into bugs and fix them over time. So I'm just going to try to show you some tips and tricks for debugging, or what I would do. So the setup is we have this application built in React, and I went ahead and just added a bunch of bugs to the application. Okay, so I already know the solutions to the bugs, so it's not going to be a really good debugging session. It's not going to be a true debugging session, but hopefully you can take something away from this. Okay, so starting off, we have a bug where there's a bug on the home page. So if I were to navigate over to the home page, you'll notice that the application crashes. Okay, you're going to see a lot of bugs like this potentially when you're dealing with React. And when you see those bugs, what you need to do is actually read the errors. Okay, a lot of times beginners don't read the errors. If you see something in red, take some time and read it. It says type error, cannot read property find of undefined. So that means you're trying to do a dot find on some type of undefined object. So if you look at this code here, usually it tells you like what line, right? But I'll be honest, the stack traces for some of this stuff is awful. So it doesn't actually tell you what line number it failed on, but it does tell you like the function. Actually, it does tell you. I just need to look, right? So that's my problem. I didn't even look at the text. It tells you right here, line 10. I think it's because it's just really small and hard to read, but it says inside source, common, voting widget, line 10, this failed. Okay, so cannot read property find of undefined, and look for where we're using the find keyword. Okay, we're using it here, so upvoters.find. So that makes me think that the upvoters variable is actually undefined here. So if you want to actually go a step further, you can add like a debugger statement here and refresh your page. And you'll notice that if I hover over upvoters, it's undefined. So that's what the issue is. And now we need to figure out, why is this undefined? What are we passing down into here, which is causing it to be undefined? So at that point, what I would do is copy this voting widget and do a full project search, right? So if you don't know how to do a full project search, it's Command-Shift-F in VS Code. And then you can type in like a DOM element like this, and this will show me everywhere in the application where it's being used. So it turns out it's used two places. It's used on the discussion page and the postcard page. So we want to make sure that we are like on the right page. Okay, so we went to the home page, which means that this happens to be on the postcard. Okay, so since I know this application, it makes more sense, and I know like where to look. But if you don't know, we're trying to go to this route here where it says path of slash. You can verify that up here. You see how there's like no trailing anything. It's just localhost 3000. So we know we're on the home page. So if you just go ahead and dive into that by doing F12, and I think I need to do it again. Let's see, why is this not working? There we go. That's a quick way to just kind of dive into the implementation of whatever class or function that you're looking on. Another way I could just do it is Command P, type in like homepage and just open it that way, but just do whatever works for you. So as you're looking through here, you'll notice that there's nothing too much going on here, but feed card looks familiar because I think that was printed out somewhere. Oh, that was over here. So we saw that the voting widget was actually inside something called a postcard. Let's try to dive into the feed card. You kind of just have to like know the code in this space. All right, so now that we see that the feed has a postcard, let's dive into the postcard and see what's going on here. So we have a postcard, a lot of stuff going on here, but really you don't need to know much about what's going on. Let me zoom in. I forgot to zoom in, so sorry if the text is a little bit small. I usually zoom in for the YouTube videos, so it's easier to see on your phone. All right, so now we have to kind of look through here and figure out, where are we calling that voting widget? So we're calling it here. And let's just actually look at the upvoters, right? That's the thing that we passed in, which happened to be bad. Let me close some of this stuff so we know what's going on. All right, so we have two widgets. We have the postcard and the voting widget. And remember, we just saw that upvoters was undefined. So it makes sense that we look at what we're passing to the upvoters property here. Okay, so if we look at it, post.upvoter. Okay, so this looks okay. What you could also do is maybe just do a console log here. So what I like to do inside of VS or inside of your React components is you can just console log the value here if you want. So now I need to get rid of the debugger. Let's try refreshing and see what happens. So, okay, so that printed out undefined. Let's just print out post, okay? So upvoter is undefined like we already kind of saw. We print out post, we get an object in our console log. And if we zoom in a little bit, we see that it has an upvoters array, but it's called upvoters. Okay, so now going back to your code, you'll notice that we call this upvoter. Let's change this to upvoters and see if that fixes the issue. And now the UI is working. So let's just kind of zoom back out. Cool, now everything's working. So that is one bug workflow that I'm going to work with you through. There are a couple of other easier ones. I started with kind of the hardest one first. Let's look at some other ones. So turns out there's a bug. If you try to click on the top contributors over here, it takes you to a 404 page. All right, so let's try to debug why that's happening, because it should take us to the page of the actual contributor. Let me get rid of that console log real quick. All right, so what I would like to do is, if you're at a new code base that you're not familiar with, you want to know what component this list is being rendered in, okay? So what you could do is install the React Dev Tools here and go to this Components tab. And there is a inspect element here. So if you look at, there's two of them. Make sure you click the one that's closest to your React console. And you can hover over your components to figure out what JSX component they exist in. All right, so this one is in section page, and this one's in contributors. This one's in contributors. You could also click it. I think you can click it. I'm not sure. Maybe I need to refresh my page. Usually it actually like tells you. Yeah, I had to refresh my page for some reason. So now if you actually click it, it tells you, okay, this is the contributors component. So what I would do is Command P and say contributors, go to that file, and let's figure out what's going on here. So it looks like this is just made up of a bunch of, like, we loop over the users and we create a bunch of author boxes. Okay, so let's just make sure that we're in the right file. I'll put some text. We see that that renders out for us. So we're in the right file. And now we need to kind of look at the author box and see, maybe is the bug in here. So I'm going to dive into this one, Shift or F12, I believe. And in the author box, let's see what's going on here. So really all this does is it's just a link, right? This is using a React router link. So it makes me think that, okay, maybe we're just going to the wrong URL. So let's look at the URL that we're passing to the author box component. Again, this is like a custom component that we worked on that takes a URL property. So if you look at this, it goes to profiles / the username. Okay, so off the bat, that doesn't look like there's anything wrong with that. But what I would do is verify, do we actually have a route called profiles / username? So I'm going to go to my router, which is in the app. And I'm going to look through my routes and say, okay, we have /profile username, and it doesn't have an S. So maybe that's the issue. So I'm going to go here and just remove the S here. And you'll see this bug a lot where you accidentally added an S. We don't need an S. So now when I click on Bobby, it actually redirects me to the correct page. So another simple issue where we were able to fix it by just figuring out the correct routes that we have in our application and then changing the URL to match that path. So in our application, we get a 404 error when you're doing issues like that. So once you fix an issue with a 404, you're kind of familiar with the issue, and you will kind of know based on your memory that if I see a 404 page, I'm probably going to a route that doesn't actually exist, right? So always just check the routes if that's the issue. All right, so I think we did posts are broken. We did let's see, settings, dark theme. Yeah, we did this one. All right, so now if we go to the settings page, there's another bug I kind of added in where you can go over here and change Oh, I guess you can't change light mode. There's something going on with the dark mode toggle. Okay, you can't actually toggle dark mode. So this might be another simple issue. Let's just go ahead and use the component inspector, figure out where this is. So maybe just click on this card and figure out what top level parent component this exists in. So this is in a user settings page. So even if you don't know the application, you can use this like technique to get more familiar with it. So we're in the user setting page. This one's a little bit more beefy, a lot of stuff going on here. So we want to find explicitly where are we doing this dark theme. So what I would do is copy some text here and just search this file for it. And that'll take you straight to the issue or the relative component, right? So let's look at the input box. This is the button, the toggle button. If we look at it, when we click it, it's supposed to dispatch a dark light theme Redux action. Okay, so let's verify that that's happening. So I'm going to go to my Redux tab here. This is another extension you have to kind of install in Chrome. And I don't know if there's a way to clear this out, but when you click it, let's see if it fires off a Redux action. So it did. It fired off Mumble theme. And what I'm noticing here is that it's not changing any state. Okay, so this action was supposed to dispatch a payload that basically changes the true or false. But what I'm noticing is that it's not actually doing anything. Like usually this diff tab will tell you what changed in your state. Like for example, if I click this, it showed me that loading became false from true. But this isn't doing anything. So what I would do is just dive into this action some more and try to find where in the application we're checking for Mumble theme. Usually there's like a reducer. So I'm going to go down here. There is a local file, which happens to be in my reducers folder. So I'm going to click it and that'll take me to the reducer. So what's going on here? We are basically saying if we get this Mumble theme event, we are setting onto local storage the negation of dark theme. So this is basically what's making it go from false to true and true to false. And then we set it onto our state, dark theme equals state dark theme. Okay. So if you look closely, you'll notice that we toggle it here with an exclamation mark, but we forgot to do it here. So let's just add one in and hopefully this will fix it now. It didn't fix it. Sometimes you have to restart your page. There we go. I don't know why I had to restart my page, but sometimes you just have to refresh your page. So that's another really important debugging tool is the refresh. If you made a change and you don't think it's being reflected on your UI, make sure you do a hard refresh of your page. So that's Command R typically, or you can go up here and like do a hard reload. That'll like clear the cache and refresh your page. Super important to know. All right, so we got that fixed. There's, I think, 2 more bugs. So another one is the modal won't open. So if I click on these edit buttons, it was supposed to open up a modal for me. That way I can actually edit my about and skills. But right now that's not working. So again, let's just inspect this. This happens to exist on the same user setting page here. You can also like hover over this stuff to see. So I'm going to go to my user setting page and look for skills or edit, whichever one. I'll go to skills. Okay, so we have a button here called edit. So this is like the edit button. And when you click it, it calls an update function, okay? Now the bug is when you click this, it's not actually doing anything. So let's look at the update function, which is declared somewhere in this file. A quick trick is, again, F12 will take you straight to the function. And we just need to look at this function and figure out what's going on. So looks like we get the data from data type. I'm not even sure what this is doing. But we set the modal content to data type, and then we have to figure out why the modal's not popping up. So it turns out if we look up here, maybe there's like a function that we didn't call. Like how do we actually get the modal to show? So we need to actually understand like where the modals are displayed. So let's look around here a little bit, and you'll see that we have 2 modals. Okay, we have a user settings modal and a profile picture crop modal. And this is only going to be displayed when, let's see, active. So it looks like there's an active boolean that we pass, and you can kind of dive into the implementation to figure out how active is working. but I'm assuming this is just dynamically showing the modal if active is set to true. Right, so this is a modal, we're just passing active down further. This will take some more like deep diving to understand the code base, but usually on modals and different components, there's a way to like toggle it. So I'm going to assume that active equals this is how we do it. So let's look at update modal active and see like where that's defined. So that happens to be a state variable that's set to false. And just to kind of verify this, if I default this to true, you'll see that the modal pops up. So we have the functionality in place, but it seems like we're just not setting this to true when we need to. So let's go back to that function. I think it was called update. And I think we just need to make sure we call set update modal active to true. And that should hopefully make it pop up. So I'm going to click edit here. And notice that the modal is now popping up. So we fixed that bug. Pretty cool, making some progress. Now let's look at the last bug. Refresh on settings page. So there's like a strange bug going on here. When I refresh the page, it like clears out everything, right? So like for some reason, I can't see my user settings, although I'm logged in. Like I can verify I'm logged in here, but when I go to my settings with a refresh, it seems like everything gets cleared out. So let's go back to the user setting page and kind of look through this. So it turns out, how's this working? All right, so what I would first do is maybe look at your network tab, and I'm going to go ahead and just look at if there's any errors. This is also really important to know when debugging. Keep a track of this little red icon and look at errors that happen in your console. So off the bat, it looks like we're trying to hit API user / undefined when we refresh the page. So let me clear this and refresh. So that's kind of a red flag, right? Whenever you're trying to see undefined in a URL, you're probably forgetting to pass something. So with that being said, let's try to figure out where that's coming from. Okay, so typically there's like a reducer that's going to be sending out that information. So let me kind of look at my reducer. So we get a user detail failed, which is probably related. So let's search the project for user detail failed, or should it just fail? And find the reducer. Okay, so again, the issue we're looking at was the actual request to the backend had undefined. So we probably want to go up the ladder and find the action that's trying to make that request. Okay, so let's go to the list user details action. And you'll notice here we make a request to the backend, right? So let's just put a debugger here real quick and see if we figure out what username is. So on the first request, username is Rick. So I think it works fine, but when I do a hard refresh, that's when the bug happens. Let's look at username. All right, so username is undefined here. So when we actually refresh the page, there's something somewhere in the application dispatching this action creator. So let's look at the user settings page and try to figure out what is calling list user details. So if I search the project, or if I search this component or this page, you'll see that it shows up once here, right? So since we have a effect kind of watching on username, there's a chance that username is going to be null when the application loads. And then later on, username is set due to another request. Okay, so you're not guaranteed that this is going to be always defined when this effect fires. So what you want to do is you want to check. So if username, then you dispatch that. Okay, so that will make it so that if somewhere else in the application, maybe it's when the main app component is loading, it's going to do a request to the backend to get your user information. And then that's when you have username defined on your state. And then this effect should refire off with the actual username. So let's go back to the UI and refresh. And now when I refresh the page, notice we get back all the user information, okay? All right, so we fixed all those synthetic bugs I added into our application. I hope this was kind of useful for you all to understand how you might want to debug a React application, and more specifically, a larger scale React application. You notice here there's quite a bit of components going on, a lot of reducers, a lot of actions, so there's a lot of things that you have to kind of look into. But even if you don't know the project or you're new to the project, I think some of the techniques I showed you, such as like using this components plugin, using the Redux plugin, using your network tab, maybe even just using the element inspector, you can quickly figure out where in the code base this component is defined. And then you can start diving into the code from there to understand what's going on. Also, the F12 to kind of jump around to where stuff is defined is really, really useful. Remember that one. And then also doing a full project search is super important, especially when you're doing Redux, because this is an event-based tool, okay? So it's really decoupled, so you can't just do an F12 and dive into the reducer to figure out where this is being used. So you kind of have to like make sure you actually search your reducers folder. If you want to be more explicit, you could say like only find the folders that are in files to include. I could do like mumble front end slash source slash reducers maybe. So if you want to be more explicit where you're trying to search things, you do that. It really just depends on where you store your reducers and stuff. So yeah, let me know if this was useful. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching this video. Be sure to leave a comment below if you have different ways you like debugging your React applications. And like always, if you're new to this channel, be sure to click the subscribe button because I'm going to have other videos like this in the future that should hopefully help you become a better web developer and React developer. Cool. Have a good day and happy coding.